Thank you, Katie. Always good to hear some traditional solutions, how those are moving forward with our companies, and to see new companies, which we have coming next. Companies that are bringing us new products, new features, using AI, using standards as the foundation of those products, and giving us an insight into more than just traditional listings, listing display, listing search. But as we get further into a transaction with brokers, with agents, all the way through transaction management. So we have Josh Lamerton from Proptexx and Eugene Pack of Sidekick. Please welcome them.
Technologic, 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 technologic. Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, chart it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it, write it, get it, paste it, save it, load it, check it, quick rewrite it, budget.
Oh, that was great walk-on music. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, I'm going to try to be loud to keep you awake. I'm from New York originally, so I'm going to be a little obnoxious. I apologize for that. But I'm going to quickly let my counterpart here introduce himself. And I'm going to say, give him a little grace, please, because he is 15 hours ahead. Oh. He flew the farthest just to come to present to all of us from Thailand. So, Josh, you want to do a little intro and talk about what you guys are working on?
Yeah, so great to be here. Of course, really enjoyed the conference. So my name is Josh Lamerton. I'm a co-founder at Proptexx, and basically we were a Reach company. We went through the Reach Canada program. We've been in business for around 5 years, venture-backed. And we've sort of evolved our business into this sort of Swiss Army knife of sort of AI application within within real estate. So very domain-specific applications, all of which is built around standardization. So we've built our own language model, we've built our own VLM. We do a lot of image analysis and also sort of image-to-image generation as well. So. Great to be here. So we'll be looking at, the things that we've built on, and that's actively in the market, and then sort of the newer solutions that's becoming available for brokers and agents. So,
great. Thank you. And then, let's see if this thing works. There we go. I am, again, Eugene. I work at a company called Sidekick. I'm Director of Growth and Strategic Partnerships. And my much smarter counterpart, Jason, is our CTO, is right up here. So if you have very technical questions, please find him. I'm just a sales guy. So anyway, no, I'm part of the founding team at Sidekick, and essentially what people ask, what does it do? We are a virtual AI assistant. Our mission goal is really to help agents and brokerages just become better at what they do and to make it more efficient. We built out some of our own modules, but we're also planning on to hooking up with others. There's some really good product out there that we'd like to connect with, but also our story is we used to be a brokerage, and because due to certain business decisions, this was more advantageous for us to pivot and to focus completely on this tool, because what we believe is we still want to help agents be better at what they do, but as we know, managing a brokerage in this current environment wasn't exactly very easy. So we made that decision, and we have no regrets about it. And a lot of who we are speaking to is our MLSs, because again, for both of us, and this is what we're going to get into right now, is data. And what's the first most paramount thing is, I know it's easier said than done, but good, clean data, especially for our models. It's, as they say, garbage in, garbage out, or the opposite of that. So we fast forward to that, and then I don't know if you want to kind of.
Yeah, so maybe let's look at some of the applications that we've already built, and starting with things like image tagging and understanding content around property listings, and how that's evolved into helping support the search experience for the consumer. Of course, the standardization around the IDX and other sort of web feeds. But the sort of data layer that we're working on is maybe bi-directional, where we can start to use AI to capture a lot more sort of data points using a range of systems to help then sort of re-enrich additional systems within like the MLS or within the brokerage sort of setup. So anything?
Yeah, well, for obviously the Fender side, again, as we just mentioned, having standardized data is paramount because again, we're obviously a lot of our companies are using large language models, or in Josh's case, they actually built it. But again, it's just an empty shell unless it has good, clean fuel, for lack of a better analogy, coming in. If it doesn't have good, clean fuel, it will not run properly. And so, this is kind of where we appreciate, obviously, and we support RESO because again, that's the mission, is to try to get as much of this standardized across the board with obviously some variables. Like we want to leave a little creativity. We understand that. But at the same time, there should be really basic, let's say, data sets that should be literally no different whether we're looking in California, North Carolina, or Kentucky, whatever, right? Bedroom's a bedroom, whatever, and so on and so forth. That should be, again, not something that, at least in our opinion, that's something, unfortunately, for the vendors, that's not something we would like to have to deal with. We would just, hope. And I think so far, look, for most of us, I think in here, understand this, and that's why we're here. And we appreciate that we're all at least in that same boat, in the same room, hoping that we can all do this, rowing together forward on this. And as we can see, look, structured listing data, I think you guys are all using different systems and such. But, again, the goal behind it is to make some guidelines and rules that will help standardize that. Which kind of leads into, look, I don't know, this has been only my second RESO. I've been in the industry, by the way, if you saw my background earlier, I've been in real estate for almost 25 years. I started as an agent, manager, broker, so I understand what it's like to, the end user, which is the agent/broker here. And, in terms of how tech has evolved over that time as we know, it's accelerating. Maybe 15 years ago, it was some typical software, and it's distinct, it would be unique, so on and so forth. Now, it's like everybody's saying we use AI or have leveraged it or built in AI and so on and so forth. But the other thing we're also finding is, Josh and I have been talking, hey, what do you got work on that could potentially we can couple with? That's the thing about AI, is actually it's creating this layer that actually we can become more interoperable. And I know talking to a number of MLS directors here and CTOs and such, that's, I think, one of your big pain points, correct? You're having all these different applications. It's like, okay, how do I make this so that it's easier for my members to interact with? And again, universal standards is going to be the paramount. And then, I don't know, what are some of the pain points that you've been running into?
Yeah, I think the treasure trove of new data that AI has sort of opened up, and of course the schema mapping sort of complexity around that, and more data has become available, accessible, and has value. So, how is that being ingested and how is that being utilized? Maybe to the last bullet point here, sort of AI now moving into this sort of foundation layer that, not only application services are being built on top of, but, fundamentally it's becoming a data layer. So, the challenge is always going to be, the existing challenge of mapping sort of database schema, now with new fields and new variations, so how do we sort of ingest that into keeping it standardized, but also keeping it being useful. So,
yeah, and before we kind of move forward, you can see in the parentheses on the second bullet point, I think this was something that we added on that was really important, is so in addition to having standardization just around the MLS data, we're actually encouraging this group and all your colleagues to really start thinking about standardized guidelines, so specifically around AI. So we have, again, we have partnered with a number of MLSs. And thankfully, because we're just kind of barreling forward, right? The questions come up. The number one question is, for example, are you feeding our data onto a learning model? And at least for Sidekick, and I believe you guys too, we do not feed it to the model. We actually keep it separately housed and so on and so forth. The way we leverage AI or OpenAI is for almost best way to put it is translation, right? So it translates what I, the user, want, in terms of how to access the data, what I want to do with it, and then what it does is it spits it back into a code that it now translates and spits it back to me in the way I wanted it. For example, if I say, hey, I wanted a spreadsheet showing these, average days on market, whatever, so on and so forth, that's what it's doing on the background. But nowhere is that data being fed into the model itself, right? So, and I know that's always been the number one question now as we approach different MLSs, which I think is great. But point being is like, hey, that would be great if you guys can sort of maybe here or, I don't know, CMLS, but somewhere if you guys can get together to start building some bullet point list and such, because like we're in the forefront of a lot of this type of technology. There's, it's Justin, there's a few other guys out here, people out here that are doing this, but there are gonna be more coming in, right? And I would say, yeah, you can use it somewhat for, obviously for compliance reasons, but the other part of it is just like somewhat selfishly on our end. If we have some sort of clear, guidelines from the get-go, that actually helps us develop quickly, but also get off on the right foot, as opposed to like going somewhere left here, and all of a sudden you guys are like, oh, wait a minute, you can't do that. It's always harder to retract and then move forward. We'd rather just get off on the right foot. So something to think about, when you go back and for your respective leadership groups and such like that, is something to think about. And obviously, we're here to give some input on that and such. Let's talk more about the applications and what's coming out. Again, if you've spoken to any of us or if you've done your own research, the model, this technology is powerful. It is democratized technology. In other words, an agent, broker, again, nothing to do with technology other than maybe, again, they kind of interact with it a little bit. But the beauty of this is they can just talk to it, whether it's verbally or typing it in. But the point is they can just talk to it and it can do what they're looking to do. They don't have to learn how to program. And that's extremely powerful. And, and the other thing also is like, on our side, being, more on the vendor side, we're leveraging, now we have the ability to actually leverage multiple platforms. So for example, OpenAI and Anthropic, or OpenAI, Grok, or I'm trying to think what's the other one, not DeepSeek. That one's a bad one. But you get what I'm saying, that we're gonna have that ability to really supercharge, our abilities and such like that. And so that's something to be excited about, actually, for you guys as well, but also be cognizant if that's what's going on. The other thing is also just, I think it's on, let me see over here. Yeah, so Inman did a survey, and this is last year, by the way. Its number is definitely gonna be higher. Just the number of agents who have said they have used ChatGPT to create something was at least 80, this is one that responded to the survey, was 85%. And actually, it'd be kind of interesting to say. So in this room, how many of you, just raise your hand if you have used AI, not just like kind of in the system, but like you have used it for yourself. Like just raise your hand. Like I just kind of get a rough idea. Okay, yeah. So this is the room full of more knowledgeable people, and you can see like it's pretty universal across the board. And so that's what we're hoping is that you guys are coming, when we come to you or whomever, whether it's for trying to pitch our product or just in general trying to better understand this, how we can all move forward together in this new world, we hope that we can do this together. Anything that you're kind of generally thinking about this?
Yeah, I think now that, we're seeing a lot more diverse application, especially at the brokerage level. I mean, we've looked at MLS optimization and, frankly, if you're not using sort of an AI to enhance your compliance, you sort of data check, then, why wouldn't you be doing that? I mean, everyone seems to be moving in that direction. So, another example of this is, the likes of OpenAI becoming a social media platform. Why are they doing that? To obtain real-time data. So we have the ability to be able to do that with what the broker's actually doing on these interfaces. How are they actually, applying data? What's their interaction looking like? So, we're creating this wealth of additional data that can then be plugged into tools and services that can help optimize exactly their operational pain points. So, this is where we're going to start to see new product and new application.
Yeah, and so again, number one thing we heard, just standardize and update your data. Again, we're running into a number of data agreements. Some are more forgiving than others. We have signed on and it's great and everything. Others are a bit more, have been more introspective about it and will come up with different questions, which, by the way, we welcome. But what we have seen, again, being on this side of things, is that we realize, we're like, wow, it's even, again, we had almost 100% of people raising their hands of using it, but then the question is, and I'm not gonna ask to raise your hands on this, but how many of you within your own organizations have been thinking about how to really integrate it, but also how is it going to be, like you're using AI, I guarantee probably a lot of you are using AI to do compliance, but then, that's for the agent. But then how many of you guys have a compliance around the AI itself? Right? So that's another thing to really kind of like consider. And again, it may sound odd coming from us like this, but again, the more that there's some how would I say, some structure, the better for us. And we can build responsibly. So, because if you let a company, let's say, look, I come from real estate. Josh has been in real estate for quite some time in his own right. But can you imagine, like, there are companies out there that are coming out of left field, and they're, it's not even an ask for forgiveness, rather than permission thing. They won't care, right? Unless you give them, again, some idea of like, hey, we'll work with you, but you got to at least come from this starting point. So get them from the beginning. And let's see, anything on this particular one? This is the final one. You can do the call to action. I think I've already made my point about standardizing.
Yeah, it's back to, what we've already done with property listing intelligence and how that's being standardized, and of course the data dictionary being a perfect example of that. But yeah, back to how these, new applications and, one aplenty is becoming available. How are we going to transition to all that new data? There needs to be the same standardization in the day-to-day operational side of not only the MLS, but the brokerage operation as well. And again, when we can feed that back in, we can build better product, and we can continue to, look at standardization equals efficiency, right? And, as some of the bullet points highlighted, it creates ease of integrating new product or even building new product. So I think fundamentally, it's still unknown because there's vast amounts of data that's becoming available. But yeah, it's exciting times, right? So.
Yeah, and just to wrap it all up, I think our thing is we want to, we want the MLS to become partners in this. Like, again, we're not just looking at it be like, just give us a data feed or anything like that. Like, this has to be a sort of a whole industry combined effort of like moving forward with this. And again, at least hopefully rowing in this same general direction. The way at least we look at it is like, this is literally the equivalent of when the internet first came out. So I think a number of us were in the industry actually when internet came to be and how that got incorporated to business. And then at some point it was sort of like, however that evolved, and to the point where it's like, you imagine like, oh yeah, having a website became such a big thing. Now it's just sort of like, okay, you don't have a website? Like, these are all just sort of basic, ubiquitous things. The idea of actually actively utilizing AI is going to be the same concept. Right now, it's still new. So everybody's just kind of like, ooh, somewhere in the near future, because this is an accelerating technology, they are going to be like, in a much shorter time span, they're like, how come we don't have this? How come we don't, how come I can't access it using this type of tool or so on and so forth? And so we want to be, what we encourage all of us is to do our best to be ahead of that. And also, but do it in a responsible manner. So I think with that, we'll give you back a couple minutes. We appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please let us know, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Yeah,
Thanks, Josh. Hope you get some rest.